You know, here's my belief. Those of you that are listening to me on YouTube, there's so many people trying to hear what I have to say. You're crashing the program.
Definitely.
YouTube.
Look, it's you.
At any rate, if you can still hear me, we're just kind of killing time until we are live on Facebook as well as YouTube. In the meantime, drinking, waiting, Kyle's sweating. Beads of sweat is falling off his forehead onto my knee, and I would have that no other way. Okay.
Still not on Facebook?
Oh, it's just looking on YouTube again. Let's see.
There's no reason that it wouldn't work. We've done it the same way.
Except for the fact that the house has been totally rewired in the last.
To do with it.
Okay. So nothing on Facebook?
Not sure enough yet.
Well, that's all right.
It'll be recorded on YouTube and we can
Okay.
do
Anyway,
podcast it.
listen, I'm going to get on with it because we don't want to take everybody's time. It is live on YouTube, and we will go forward with this. I'm going to be talking about the workshop I just did in Sedona. I was actually on the road 4 weeks in a row. We did the Olympic National Park. We did Astoria, Sedona during the Easter weekend. And now we went on to Moab, and in between we photographed the Great Southwest. So coming home to sun was perfect. And now I think I will start this baby so I can talk over myself. And we're gonna screen share and I'm gonna talk about Moab. And here we go. Hit play.
Sedona.
Don't correct me in front of people I'm trying to impress. Of course, I meant, whenever I say Moab, I mean Sedona. Anyway, yeah. So April in Sedona during the Easter weekend was an amazing experience. And along with that, it's been cool in Phoenix, and suddenly the weather turned warm and it was the reverse. It was hot in Phoenix and everybody fled to Sedona during the Easter weekend to come and watch me teach my workshop. No, that's not true. They just got out of the heat of the valley and came up to the cooler Sedona. Anyway, we had 3 participants, which speaks volumes for the fact that we will teach a workshop even with 1 participant. Teaching a workshop in Sedona over Easter was destined to have very few people. I'm actually going back down there on Thursday. We've got 10 people signed up, which is more than norm. In fact, many of our workshops have been sold out. So I think it belies the fact that people are so ready to get out. And everybody in our Sedona and our Moab workshops were fully vaccinated, which then makes everybody a lot more comfortable. And we had a great time. And so going forward, if people want to sign up for a workshop, we do have some spaces available. Look on our website, in particular, Crescent City and the Redwoods, which really surprises me. We only have 1 person signed up. So if you really want one-on-one, or we have actually 2 instructors and 1 participant. So that poor soul, I feel sorry for him. So why don't you sign up for that workshop and dilute us? I'm actually diluting myself right now. Okay. So when people think of Sedona, of course they think of the red rocks and the big mesas. But in fact, every time I teach a workshop, my goal is really tap into the imagination of the participants. So we don't do the obvious. We go into the canyons, out of the sun, away from these beautiful red rocks, and we go into places that most people would walk by. And from that, we tap into the art of a location. We would be remiss if we didn't actually provide 1 sunset evening for the people that love the big landscape. So that's what you're seeing right now. You know, we find a place along Oak Creek, and Cathedral Rock is probably the most iconic image in the Sedona Valley. So we do that, but they only get 1 chance at shooting the cliche. And then we go into places that they wouldn't think of when they think of Sedona. And of course, Oak Creek Canyon comes out of this valley at the base of the buttressed area where Flagstaff, Arizona is. It's fed by snowmelt, so the creek runs clear and through these beautiful forests. It was early. You know, now if you went back 2 weeks later, all those trees would be green and budding out with blossoms. But Easter, half the trees were denuded of, and you can answer that phone. Boy, people are signing up right away. At any rate, I'm just rambling because I'm out of sync with doing tequila. It's been what, 4 weeks, 3 weeks? Oh, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sedona is filled with sun. And so we have to get up early. We were typically working from 6 a.m. to around 8:30 before the sun would rise. And then we'd have breakfast. We would take a break and do a critique and then get back out in the afternoon as the light was getting better. But boy, it's brutal in the bright sunshine of Sedona. And in those early days, in the early mornings of those days, we would get out into the forest and shoot these gnarly sycamore trees that are just extraordinarily beautiful, ghost white against the red cliffs of Sedona. Really quite nice. And we scouted this area for a couple of days. Certainly within the bark of the sycamore, there's all sorts of things we would do from a creative point of view, finding metaphors and things that look like other things, like this Casper the Friendly Ghost. And, you know, I love doing that actually. And with only 3 participants over Easter, we had a great time and had great food and really got to know the area. So now when we go back there on Thursday, we have it wired. We know exactly where to go. I'm not trying to sell this to you because it is sold out, but next year I'm sure we're going to be doing a Sedona workshop. And in fact, Gabrielle is going to plan to do one in October of this year. So you not only have the beautiful colors of the rock, but you also have the fall color. So look forward to seeing and hearing about that. I love shooting the intimate landscapes. And, you know, yeah, we could teach a whole workshop just doing the iconic vistas where everybody's going with their iPhone. And at the end of the workshop, nobody's learned anything. There's no learning when you're just shooting the cliches. And so going into the canyon, shooting the intimate landscapes, pushing one's imagination was what this is all about. And teaching is highly rewarding for me. And here's a great example of that. Getting low to the really placid ponds within Oak Creek, we're shooting very low to the ground. In fact, that previous shot, the person, John Gringo, was about 1.5 feet off the water. We're now getting right into the mud, right on the edge, and we're shooting these perfect reflections, but that's not really what we're after. It's not the reflections that we're after, it's what we do in inverting them into verticals and suddenly playing a little bit in Lightroom, burning and dodging and playing with contrast. And suddenly we're turning a rudimentary reflection into something akin to a kaleidoscope, that toy that you played with as a child.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I love turning it in. And here, again, a log with branches in the pond. And suddenly when you turn it vertically, you've got something that looks like a fox. I love doing that. I love finding metaphors within the abstraction. And certainly by inverting it vertically, they become abstracted.
Yeah.
And the colors, I mean, these remind me, Libby, of Georgia O'Keeffe's. You know, she used a lot of antlers in her work. And there is something that reminds me of a fox in this image. You see all sorts of faces as we go forward. Here, inverting the reflection, you've got a kind of a wise old owl with big ears.
No wind in that canyon?
No, when we get up really early, we avoided the wind as well. And here, look at these colors and designs. They recall the Navajo rugs that are in this area. And boy, the colors and the shapes are there. And you wouldn't see that as you're walking along the creek. You're seeing the bigger landscapes, but kind of mining this for the sense of design, the colors, and the simplicity of these designs gets revealed. And this one looks like a ghost. It looks like a human shape that you would never perceive just looking at the wall. But once you reflect it and invert it, suddenly things reveal themselves. So this is really great for the imagination of the participants and pushing their work forward, which is exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
So we work a lot with water and reflections and depth of field. Here, just a single rock is kind of sticking out of a pond, but with great depth of field, we're getting the reflections of the sycamores in the very placid water.
nice.
You like that?
Yeah.
I pay you to like that, right?
I haven't seen any of these images
I know.
since you guys got back.
And you can see it pretty well on your iPhone?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Do we have Facebook on board or is it still just YouTube?
I'm on YouTube. I haven't checked back on Facebook.
No, but I made a post to reroute everybody to YouTube.
Okay.
It should be good. All I
Good.
have to do is click it.
Okay.
The login and everything.
So, along the creek, along Oak Creek, there's areas where there's little mud puddles and very calm water beyond the main ponds. And as the last fall's vegetation starts to rot, it puts out an oil. And so that oil reflects colors differentially. And so this is what we spend time in. By now, people are walking into the canyon and seeing us photographing, mud, and they go, "What are you shooting? Are you seeing a salamander?" No, we're seeing rainbows. And it takes them to put their eye behind our viewfinder to really see what we're doing. They would never even imagine the colors or the strength of the image. So bubbles in the stream. And after breakfast, there was this single, I don't know if it was agave, but it was in the family of an agave. And it was just this amazing study of lights and darks, positive and negative. So with Gabrielle, we had 5 people kind of shooting around this one agave right in the plaza outside the restaurant we shared breakfast. And we probably spent the better part of 40 minutes really concentrating on doing the abstracts and the lines and the beauty of that.
Nice.
Because we have friends in Sedona, we got 4-wheeled Jeeps and we went off into this canyon that nobody really knows much about. There was nobody else in the canyon, but what was in the canyon were these really ancient petroglyphs. And that was fun.
That's awesome.
But you can really tell how old these petroglyphs are by looking at the lichen growing within the chiseled stone. And lichen is amongst the oldest, slowest growing plant life on the planet. And when it's already growing within the petroglyphs, it just says that these petroglyphs are obvious hundreds, but perhaps thousands of years old. So that was a great find. And look at this deer, rather fat little plump deer on the stone in this canyon, and it's filled with lichens. Now we had to step over a rattlesnake when we were there, quite honestly.
I heard about that.
Yeah, there was definitely a rattlesnake there. But look at this. The locals call this a saber tooth because there's these 2 fangs hanging down. But I'm not quite sure that saber tooths were around when, the First Nations arrived from Central Asia during the Ice Age. So, I mean, maybe they were, but I don't think so. So I'm calling this not a saber tooth. I just think it's a snaggle-toothed bear of some sort. But always with the nod towards composition. Here's the way these rocks align above the stream. But then I say, why not just tilt the camera? If there's no horizon, why not tilt the camera at a 45-degree angle and create triangular shapes and more abstract, more designy type photos? And that's a revelation for a lot of people because they're so, it's so natural for them to shoot perpendicular to the ground. But here I'm inverting the camera and twisting it around, but creating a more engaging and more abstract design. Then finally, we take people into this junkyard. They call it a museum, but in fact, it's an old mining town called Jerome. It's 45 minutes out of Sedona. And I talked with several professional photographers. Have you been to Jerome? And they said, oh yeah, we got great shots of old trucks. And in fact, there's hundreds of old trucks. But that's really not what we're about. We're not going to shoot the entirety of a truck. Yeah, I think that turns people on if they are into cars. But this is just not what we're doing. We're not shooting the entirety of a truck. So our participants get in close, and we've turned the trucks into abstracts. And what do I mean by that? We're taking the car completely out of context. You know, when we show the photos, it doesn't resemble a car. In fact, it looks like other things, and that's the joy of shooting. And look at this. This is like calligraphy, beautiful lines. And this was just part of a larger sign that said international, which was a line of trucks, international trucks. But with the heat of the desert and the age and just the harsh environment, those letters become these really calligraphy or abstracted letters to the point you wouldn't even know what they were.
It's a nice little hidden gem you guys found there.
Oh my God, we're definitely going back there next week. And we now have learned that a certain age of windshields were made with some sort of petroleum product embedded. And with time, it starts to break down the glass and create all these fanciful designs. I mean, this looks like snowflakes, right? Or ice crystals. But in fact, it's just the windshield of an old car. But look where we go with this. The more we started to look at these old windshields, if there was a yellow car behind it, then you pick up the yellow, but you're concentrating on the fractured glass. And so it just reveals an entire different world. And as we were photographing, people are walking by looking at old cars. They're not seeing any of what we're shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what these workshops really are, regardless of whether it's Sedona, Moab. I mean, it's really hard to go to Moab and not want to shoot the big landscapes, but we are going into places in Moab, as we did here in Sedona, and find the beauty and the abstraction of a place.
I'm wondering if it's hanging up on one image here.
Is it?
Still on the cracks.
Yeah.
Should I go back? What crack?
The ones with the international.
Okay. Okay. So how do we rectify that? Everybody knows that I'm more about the art of a place and not so much the technology, which we're seemingly having difficulties with, even though we put a lot of money into making this whole thing a little more fluid.
Yeah, I think with just doing the YouTube broadcast, that is fairly new to us within the last 4 times.
Only? Okay. Stay with us, folks. I'm almost through. My career, in other words, is over. I'm very melodramatic.
They can still see you. It's just.
Oh, they can still hear me? Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Okay.
It looks like a bunch of people from Facebook came over to YouTube.
Okay, so while we're waiting for Kyle to get me running, I'll read a question. Here's a question. Art, you are so good looking. How do you remain looking so young? Oh, that was written by me. Okay, well, I killed a minute or two right there. Drugs and alcohol would be the right answer, actually.
Has the opposite effect on most people.
Yeah, well, I know.
Oh, that sun is starting to come in, but it's not bad though.
What are you seeing now?
Give me a couple seconds since it's delayed.
This gives me more time to drink
There
tequila.
we go. Now we're into your.
Let's see when it gets big
snowflakes.
though. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, eventually I'm going to show the work of Scott Pope, Aravind Swami, and Nora Rudin. And I know if they're watching, they don't want to see my photos. They want to see their photos. So we got to get this thing right. Now, is it changing?
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Now I see what you're talking about. That's amazing.
Oh, did you think you were humoring the old guy and
well,
say?
I didn't say anything. I just nodded my head until I can actually see the photo.
All right. At any rate.
How did you guys discover that what was causing that effect?
You know, when I was with you in Atlanta, when we went into that old, uh, geez, there was thousands of cars up there north of
Oh,
Atlanta.
yeah.
And recall, I got into a couple of old cars and I started discovering how glass breaks down with this petroleum.
Mm.
But that was pretty cool. But this was like on steroids. I
Yeah.
mean, there's 3 or 4 old trucks in Jerome that have this magical glass. And again, people are just walking by because they don't see it the way I'm shooting it, right?
Mhm.
They're just seeing maybe a little bit of a small portion of a windshield that looks different, but they're not even looking at that. You know, they're remembering that their great uncle had a truck like that. That's what they're thinking. And they quite honestly think we're nuts. You know, when they walk by, they all think, okay, these guys are kind of crazy, which has a little bit of truth, but
I wasn't gonna say it.
all right, see this? Can you see this image? There's actually the shape of an elephant in that on the right. Is that the same image you're looking at?
It'll give me 1 second. There
I
we
think I
go.
kind of see
Yep.
it.
Yeah. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's metaphors, things that look like other things. So here's a nice design, but within that, then there's something that reminds you of some animal. And that's
Mhm.
just one more layer that hooks people in to look closer. And on the left side of this image, there's something that looks like a bull challenging a rather distorted bullfighter. Do you see that? Or do you?
Oh yeah, yeah, I can see
Okay.
that.
I mean,
Mhm.
if you don't see it, here, have some tequila. You'll see it really quick.
Oh, that's just beautiful. This is all reflecting the light of the canyon.
Yeah. I mean, if, no, not the canyon, but this old junkyard. And so you move slightly left or right and you put a dark background behind it or a yellow car, and then suddenly you've got something different. All right. So now we're moving on to a couple of, well, the 3 participants. These are a handful of their images. This is Aravind, who's been in 3 of our workshops so far. We like Aravind very well.
Nice.
And these are some of his beautiful works. So it's not just me that gets into this. It's people that have been infected by the same thing I've got. And I don't remember seeing this. Aravind found this completely. I don't know. It looks like something out of area, what is it? That area in New Mexico where they claim that they got some alien. That looks like an alien with a very large brain. Yeah, what was it? Area 64?
51.
51. I knew that.
Yeah.
I'm just bad at math. And look at this extraordinary landscape that Aravind found. It looks like, you know, some of the buttes of the red rocks down there in Sedona with the cracked earth. And that, again, is just within one of these old cars. And that I'm really pleased with.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it looks like a miniature landscape. You know, there'll be 100,000 people a year that photograph Cathedral Rock. Aravind got this shot and nobody else has it. But no, I went back and I ripped him off. I got a great shot of that. Aravind, you know this. So this reminds me of an aerial that I shot over Iceland in the winter. And it's got the same fractured of ice, but this is all within that windshield in that ghost town.
Oh, wow.
And a beautiful inverted shot of the canyon. So Aravind pays attention and he does really good work. And when I look at this image, it reminds me of a praying mantis.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool stuff, huh?
Yeah, he takes the time to scrutinize his
Yeah.
subject.
Well, and then there's Nora. And Nora's been in 3 or 4 of our workshops. And every one I can see it marked improvement. And she's now, I mean, I just turn her loose. She doesn't need any hand holding. She finds her own compositions. And it's really nice work. And you're just seeing the first light of the sun coming up and highlighting these ghost-like sycamore trees against the cool shaded canyon walls. And I just find that really quite nice.
Yeah, she's got a great eye for composition.
She is really coming along. And this is another thing she found, this reflection of trees and the rocks, and then inverted it upside down. So you see the rocks and the trees, and then you see the distorted lines. And so you have to kind of stay with this image to understand what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And that's a device that we really try to push, less obvious the subject, the more committed people are to try to scrutinize what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And the reverse of that, of course, is just a beautiful sunset on Cathedral Rock. Everybody sees it, they understand what they're looking at, and they say, okay, move on.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want people moving on. We want them to really analyze an image like this that's got organic tree shapes, but the distorted lines are brought to you by the disturbed surface of a pond and then further confused by inverting it upside down.
Oh, yeah.
And this is one of Nora's finds in the old car. Look at that. It looks like a puffer fish. See the shape of the fish towards the right side of this image, big eyes, kind of a larger head. It is the shape of a puffer fish.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the more I drink this tequila, the more I'm convinced it is.
Yeah, tack sharp, I'm sure. She's very technically sound.
And this is just the beautiful abstractions within the sycamore bark. And an elephant in the trunk of a very, well, maybe in fact it would be a woolly mammoth. What do you think?
That last one of the bark looked almost like an aerial.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like an aerial. It also looks like some sort of serpent with it. I get choked up. Gab, there's a little sugar in this one. He's trying to make me sweet, and that's never going to work. Yeah, I like this one. So that's very metaphoric. I mean, because that area within the trunk, not the trunk of the tree, the trunk of the tree, not the trunk of the mammoth, looks like an elephant eye. So that really gives you that that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Scott Pope. And Scott, I think, was one of my first victims. He signed up with his wife on a boat in Southeast Alaska around 40 years ago.
Wow.
How old are you?
38.
38.
Yeah.
2 years before you were born, I was already victimizing Scott. And he still comes back. Now, Scott isn't the smartest person in the world.
He's very intelligent.
He's highly intelligent because he keeps coming back.
Yeah.
So beautiful abstractions by Scott Pope. And all within cars, you know, it's what I'm happy about.
Mm-hmm.
He has a really strong sense of graphic details and textures. This was just a close-up of his pants. You know, he spends all his money on me and not his own wardrobe, which is a sad, sad, sad situation. And then reflections in the pond, you know, these white trunked sycamore trees, isn't it? Very pastel, really nice. And finally, Gav. He shot a picture of Gav in some sort of shiny part of a car, which I really love. So yeah, these guys, all Nora, Aravind, and Scott have taken numerous workshops, and they are completely on board in shooting in old junkyards rather than just shooting vistas of Sedona. So I was very, very pleased to have them. And they also permitted me to shoot my own shots so that on the next workshop this weekend, I have some lecture slides to work with, because Sedona, quite honestly, was a new location for us. So that's my little slideshow. And then next week, I'm going to talk about Moab. And we had 10 participants and we had a great time. Just came back from Moab. So tune in next week. We may be on the porch. If this weather continues, we'll do one from out in the garden.
Nice.
All right.
That would be lovely.
So everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you a week from today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.